So I'm gonna have to ask you a question. Are you a serial killer?
So, as promised, I went and saw Strange Darling over the weekend, and so glad I did. This was not only my favorite movie of this year thus far, it's my favorite movie I've seen in theaters in recent memory. There are so many good things to really appreciate about this film, and so wanted to do a report card on this movie. Now, the interesting thing about this movie is there's actually not a lot I can say while holding this review to be spoiler free, which I will hold to. This will be a spoiler free review, so you're welcome to and safe to watch this review and then still go in and see the movie as cold as possible. And genuinely, I do recommend that. The only information I had going into the movie was the trailer, which we did a creative breakdown on just a couple days ago. We posted that last week, and the trailer doesn't really give away a lot. And actually, a lot of the things that I thought I understood when I was watching the trailer ended up not playing out how I expected them to or how I anticipated them to in the movie in a very good way. So, you know, round of applause for not only the production team of the movie, and we'll dive into the nuances of the movie itself, um, but also the marketing behind this movie for not giving away too much in the trailers. So don't read a lot of articles about this. Don't watch any spoiler reviews on this. Go into this as fresh as possible, because you will be delighted at so many different points in the movie where it takes an unexpected turn or the narrative shifts in a way that you were not anticipating. And it is such a delightful ride as such. With all my report card reviews, we're looking at a handful of different elements of the film itself. We're looking at the visuals, we're looking at the sound design or the score, we're looking at the acting, the directing, the editing, we're looking at the story or the screenplay, we're looking at the total entertainment value of the movie itself through the scope of myself as a creator. With every movie, we do a synopsis of the movie, and this is going to be the shortest synopsis out of any of these synopsi. I assume that's synopsis plural, simply because there's not, as I said, there's not a lot I can say without giving away too much. So the synopsis, according to IMDb, is nothing is what it seems when a twisted one-night stand spirals into a serial killer's vicious murder spree. That's all I can say about it. There you go. That's the synopsis of the movie. So let's get into the actual report card of this movie. And I should mention, if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, turn on the bell notifications, helps the channel out so much. All right. So first, let's start with the visuals. I learned, and this was really cool, Giovanni Ribisi was the director of photography for this movie. What? When did he do more than just acting? I think that's actually such a really fun little anecdote. The visuals, the first thing you see in this movie, and this is not a spoiler, but the first thing you see is a title card that lets you know that the entire movie was filmed in 35 millimeter film. And it's very clear that this was filmed in 35 millimeter film. The graininess, it has a certain texture to it. The film stock that they were using was very sensitive to light and to color. So you had lots of highlights that were blown out, lots of very oversaturated color, almost like a slide film for photography would show you. And they had this very intentional use of color throughout the entire movie, and the stock of film that they chose to use only further added to the element. This did not necessarily feel, even though I recognize both the lead actors that were portrayed in this movie, this did not feel like you were watching actors. This felt like you were on a fly on the wall, that you were in the room with them, that you were in the car with them, that you were part of the scene with them. And this was achieved, one, through the film that they use, but two, because of the the camera lens choice and how they were composing the shots. So many of the shots were framed so uncomfortably close to the subjects. They were inches away from their subjects with what I assume would be like a 35 millimeter lens, to really make you feel like you are right up against these characters in so many of these scenes. And just watching just facial expressions alone and how people's emotions are displayed through through their facial emotions was so powerful. Visually, just absolutely superb movie. Next comes sound design. This was probably my favorite portion. There are a lot of favorites. I'm a huge fan of this movie, but the sound of this movie, both the actual sound of the film itself, the sounds of certain actions or certain objects, were so loud and so crisp. Genuinely, once again, that fourth wall was being eroded, and it felt like you were there on set with these characters. Also, the musical score and the sound design that they, or the song designs that they chose for this movie, really played into the overall narrative structure of this film. For example, whenever one of the characters appears on screen, there's this very loud, booming sound that you don't just hear, but you actually feel every time it happens. Songs like, "Love Hurts" being such an a essential part of this film. The sound design was superb. Acting also flawless. Flawless performances from everyone in the movie, particularly the two lead actors. You had Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner. Both did outstanding, and played roles very counter to anything they've ever played before, and played so effectively. Once again, did not feel like actors portraying a role, felt like genuine identities that you were witnessing play out. The director was JT Mollner, who I don't know if he's directed anything full length before. I saw some shorts to his credit. It looks like one full length prior to. Um, Very powerfully portrayed. You have to have a lot of confidence as a director to make a lot of the decisions that were made, from the cinematography choices to the portrayal of the actors in the film, to the composition of certain shots, to the editing and the pacing of this movie. You have to have confidence in your story, you have to have confidence in your actors, and you have to have confidence in your DP, and he absolutely did. They took lots of creative risks in this film that all really paid off. Then comes into the editing. This movie, and this is not a spoiler because you find out right away, this movie is laid out non-linearly. The movie is shown out of sequential order, as a way to reveal information only when they want the audience to know that information. And based off the editing of the movie, one, you don't have a lot of different locations for this movie. So, you only have a few different locations that they filmed at. There's not, like, the whole thing takes place over a very limited amount of time. So there's not a lot of different things that can happen. Despite that being said, because of how the film is cut together and how it's edited, at no point does it feel like the movie has a lull in it. Every act of the movie goes so quickly, and it surprises you how far you are into the movie when act one goes to act two, or act two goes to act three. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're already moving into the third act. it moves that quickly, and it's because of how they chose to edit this film together. So editing was absolutely flawless in that. Next comes the story and script, and this was a very simple premise that was executed perfectly. It's a very simple cat and mouse premise. There's not a very deep story behind this. But even though I said that, there are innumerable shocks and surprises that will catch you off guard, that you will not see coming. But I would not say this is an exceptionally nuanced script, but what it does is it takes a simple premise and it does it flawlessly. So entertainment, yeah, I was edge of my seat, or I was in a recliner, but edge of my recliner really this entire movie and enjoyed it so much. The only critiques I can really give about this movie is the fact that because so much of the story, which was a simple story, hinges upon surprising you as the audience member with several reveals throughout the movie, there's not that same level of impact you can have watching this movie a second time. So there's not a huge rewatch factor in this movie, with the one exception of you may rewatch things to see if there are certain hints or Easter eggs or clues that you did not pick up on in first viewing. But it might not have the same impact of, let's say, like, let's look at a linear example would be like The Sixth Sense, where once you kind of know what happens, yeah, you can watch it to see if there are any clues or hints kind of sewn in throughout the movie. But once you kind of find those, you pretty much know where the movie's going. So it might reduce the overall impact. But that's such a minor thing to really critique this movie on, which was such an enjoyable experience. I highly recommend it. So the report card is as follows: visuals 10 out of 10, sound 10 out of 10, acting 10 out of 10, directing 10 out of 10, editing 10 out of 10, story I give it a 9 out of 10, and entertainment a 9 out of 10. And the only reason I had those point reductions on that was simply because, one, like I said, it was a very simple story that was executed very effectively, and the entertainment, the only nick I give it on the entertainment is the fact that it does not have a giant rewatchability factor because so much of it hinges on the surprises that are sewn into the movie. But that gives it a total of a 68 out of 70. That's a 97%. Like I said, this has been my favorite movie of the year, my favorite movie of the last few years, and one of the best times I've had in theaters in a long time. So highly recommend you see Strange Darling as soon as possible. I don't know how much longer it's going to be in theaters. It did not have a significantly large run that I could tell, but could not recommend this movie more. Thank you so much for tuning into this review. If there are other movies you want me to check out, let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this movie or if you had thoughts about this movie, let me know in the comment section below. But also, please do not have any spoilers. Let audience members go into this movie as fresh as possible. Thank you so much for tuning into this one. We'll catch you in the next screening. Take care, everyone.